Last Monday morning, I was a little concerned about getting out of our neighborhood because of all the snow and the storm that had happened. And so I jumped in my old truck and I eased my way out of our little crescent and out to Perkins Street. And when I got to Perkins Street had been cleared off already. It had been, the snowblower had been through there and the graders and such. And so I thought, oh, I'm home free. This is really good. Typically when it snows, I don't go down Perkins and down the hill by the Shell. I usually try and avoid that because it's usually icy and whatever. And so I usually stay up, kind of go past Larry's house or something. I don't go down the hill. But because it had been graded and cleared, I thought, well, I'll go down the hill. That's the best way to go so I don't get stuck over by Larry's. So I'm rolling along, going west on Perkins, just about to the top of the hill, and I crest the hill, and I go over the other side, and I look, and it is sheer ice all the way to the bottom. Like, it looks kind of scary. So I step on my brake, and I speed up. I start sliding faster down the hill. I've got this big pile of snow in the back of my truck, and it's got a lot of weight, and I start sliding down the hill, and my anti-lock brakes aren't doing anything, and I got nothing. I'm getting a little bit scared here, because I can see myself going down Perkins and across Souris Avenue and into that big hill on the other side, and there's traffic all over the place on Souris, and I'm a little concerned here right away. I can hardly steer because, again, there's so much weight in the back of the truck. It's lifting the front, so the front tires don't have quite as much weight on them. And I'm just sliding down this hill. The only hope I have, I think, is that on the other side of the street, there's a patch of asphalt near the bottom. For some reason, there's a clear spot. And so I fought my truck over to that clear spot. Thankfully, nobody was coming up the hill the other direction. And I hit that asphalt part and I slammed on the brakes as hard as I could. And then I eased myself back on my own side of the road and got to the stop sign and looked around to see if anyone saw what happened. And then I carried on with my journey to the church building. When I got here, the first thing I did after I got my coat off and got sitting in my office, the very first thing I did was pick up my phone and write to my entire family and say, don't go down the hill by the Shell. Right? Very first thing I wanted to do was warn them because that wasn't safe. That was ridiculous. That was silly. What was I doing? Don't go down that hill. It's not the hill to go down today. I see this sermon in that exact same way. I see this sermon as a warning, saying don't go the wrong way here. Don't put yourself in a position that's really difficult. Don't do something silly here. That's what this sermon is. It's simply a warning. It's a warning about something that we don't think is very dangerous. It's a warning about something that we think is pretty benign most of the time. It's a warning about money. We think money's a good thing. We think money is a nice thing to have. We think about money a lot. You think about retirement funds. You think about how much you make. You think about how much you spend on groceries and gas. And you think about money a lot. Money doesn't seem dangerous. Money doesn't seem scary. But Jesus would tell you that money is very dangerous and very scary. In fact, depending on how you count it, it is either the second or third most talked about topic that Jesus spoke on. 36 times in the Gospels he talks about money. And in every single case he warns people about it. In every single case it's a warning. Now again, I'm not going to stand up here today and say it's terrible to have money. And if you've got money, you ought to feel bad. I'm not going to say that because I know what it's like not to have money. I know what it's like when you have to count your pennies to buy milk. I know what that feels like. And so I'm not going to stand here today and tell you that money is terrible because not having money is even worse. But once you get past having what you need, then money can become an issue. So again, rather than just stand here and say, well, feel bad for having money, I'd rather do something more productive than that. And so what I want to do this morning is teach you how Jesus thought about money. I want to give you some pictures of how he thought when people brought the subject up. I want to show you what he said when people wanted to talk about it. And then maybe we can figure out what we should be thinking about as we handle the amounts of money we've been blessed with by God as well. This sermon will be a little bit different in that I'm not going to give you an application to every point. What we'll do is we're going to pick 4 stories. We're going to look at those 4 stories, talk about them a little bit. The big application will be at the end. So hang on with me until the end of everything. Some thoughts and some ways to understand Jesus' teaching on money. And the first place we're going to begin is in Luke chapter 20. Luke chapter 20, Jesus at this point has been teaching quite a bit. He's become quite popular. People really like him, and he's got quite a crowd with him. And the teachers of the law are getting a little bit worried about him. The Jewish leaders are becoming a little bit scared of him because he's got such a large following. And so they think we need to start a controversy. We need to trap him somehow. We need to make him say something stupid so we can point out how bad he is and get our followers back. And so when they think about what can we talk to Jesus about that might cause a fight, the first thing they decide is let's talk about money. Money causes fights all the time. If you've never been to the opening of a will, you will know if you've ever been to one that money causes fights. Money divides people. Money makes people crazy sometimes. So they want to ask Jesus a money question. And they couch it in a political discussion. The Romans are the people who run the land right now, and the Jews hate the fact that the Romans are there. So the really strong Jews say we shouldn't pay our taxes to Rome. We shouldn't do that. We should just keep our money to ourselves. The Romans shouldn't have our money. They have no right to it because they shouldn't be here. So they think, let's ask Jesus. Because if he says pay the money to Rome, then we can call him a Rome lover and that'll make him some enemies. If he says don't pay money to Rome, then we'll tell the Romans and they can deal with them. So they've got him trapped. And they ask him the question in Luke chapter 20, beginning in verse 20. It says this. Keeping a close watch on him, they sent spies who pretended to be honest. They hoped to catch Jesus in something he said so they might hand him over to the power and authority of the governor. So the spies questioned him. Teacher, we know that you speak and teach what is right, and that you do not show partiality, but teach the way of God in accordance with the truth. Is it right for us to pay taxes to Caesar or not? He saw through their duplicity and said to them, show me a denarius, which is just the common coin of the day, maybe like a quarter to us. Whose portrait and inscription are on it? Caesar's, they replied. He said to them, then give to Caesar what's Caesar's, and to God what is God's. Jesus looks at this situation, gives them a really good answer, and I don't want to focus on the answer so much as the fact that I want to focus on this, and that is that Jesus didn't seem nearly as concerned about the issue as they were. Jesus didn't really seem that concerned about what happened to their money. Money wasn't much of an issue for Jesus. He said to them, what, you've got to pay taxes? Then pay your taxes. So what? Go pay your taxes. Do what you're supposed to do. It's only money. They were trying to goad him into something really important, and he didn't take the bait because he didn't think money really was all that important. He wasn't nearly as concerned about this subject as those of the people around him. And I think that's worth understanding, and I think that's a good starting point, that Jesus just never got excited about it. In any of the 36 incidents where he talks about it, he's just never really worried about money one way or the other. This is kind of his answer all the time. He just kind of shrugs and says, well, do with your money what you're supposed to do. Like, why are you so worried about it? I think this is an indicator, one of those indicator things that we need to look at. And kind of like the signal lights on your car tell other people which way you're going, the way we deal with money, the importance we give money is an indicator of something about us, I think. And Jesus' indication is this. Whatever. Use your money. Do what you're supposed to do with it. Don't obsess about it. That's his first answer. I've had this little quote for a long time. It's going to be hard to see just because of the colors, but let me read it to you. This is from A.W. Tozer. This is a preacher from the early 1900s. And if this is true in the early 1900s, you can probably guess it's worse now. But here's his quote. He says, "There can be no doubt that a possessive clinging to things is one of the most harmful habits in the Christian life." There can be no doubt that the possessive clinging to things is one of the most harmful habits of the Christian life, because it's so natural. We all do it, right? It's rarely recognized for the evil that it is, but its outworkings are tragic. And I think you're going to hear Jesus say the same things. He's going to say, why are you so worried about money and what you're going to gather up and what you're going to have and what you're going to keep and what you're going to hold on to and what you got? And so that possessiveness and that looking for things is deadly. And it's even more deadly because every single one of us does it, and so it looks normal. Jesus says we need a different approach. We need a different thought. We need a different a way to see those things. It's pretty clear that our society has over-magnified the importance of money. That's how we keep score, right? Am I doing better than you? Well, I compare my bank account or my wage or what I have. That's how we compete. That's how we do it, right? And our society's probably over-magnified the importance of money. To Jesus, a pile of other things were much more important. To Jesus, money is sort of like this. Whatever. Pay your tax. Do what you're supposed to do. That's our first stop. And that's our first indication, and that's our first thing. The second story that Luke records for us comes from Luke chapter 12. And this is a parable of Jesus. And the parable is called The Rich Fool. Now, if we hadn't titled this story this way, we would probably see it differently. If not for the title, we would probably assume this man is smart. If not for the title, we'd probably assume this man is the model of what to do. Because he looks really smart. Right? Jesus told this parable, Luke chapter 12, verse 16. "The ground of a certain rich man produced a good crop. And he thought to himself, what shall I do? I have no place to store all my crops. Then he said, this is what I'll do. I'll tear down all my barns, and I'll build bigger barns. And there I'll store my grain and all my goods. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of good things laid up for many, many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry." As Jesus tells this story to his first listeners, they're probably thinking, that guy's a smart guy. That guy's doing it really well. What a good businessman. What a smart investor. What a great guy. Look at all this stuff he stored up for himself. He doesn't even have to work for the next few years. He can just let his farm sit. He's got more than he needs. This guy's really intelligent. That's what we would normally think. Because we think the people who have the most stuff are the smartest people. Right? We kind of think that. We may not say it, but we think it, and it actually shows up in our actions. When I go to Speedway meetings, and there's a decision to be made, everyone, if it has anything to do with money, everyone looks to the richest guys in the room and says, what do you think we should do? What do you think we should do? No one ever asks me what we ought to do. Everyone asks Ed Turnbull. Because Ed's got to be smart, because Ed's got a lot of stuff. Right? We think the people who've got the most stuff are the smartest people. They have to be. How did they get all this stuff otherwise? But I want you to notice the very next line here, verse 20. After Jesus describes this guy is very well off and has more than what he needs, and is even building more to store what he's got. Verse 20 says, "But God says to him, you fool." Again, sometimes words lose their punch. In the New Testament, you would never, in fact, there's a scripture that says, never call someone a fool. Never curse them that way. Fool was the worst word you could say. When Jesus says, this man has all this stuff, and God looks at him and says, you fool, everybody listening would have went like this. Because that's a word you don't use. That is a word that is never used. And God uses it to this man that everyone else probably thought was the smartest man, he's actually a fool. You fool. This very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get all you prepared for yourself? This is how it'll be with anyone who stores up things for himself but is not rich towards God. Underline that last little bit there. Why is he a fool? He's not a fool because he's got all this stuff. He's a fool because he made that stuff more important than God. He's a fool because he focused on physical things that he's going to lose when he dies, and he's got nothing spiritual. Again, don't hear me saying that if you've got stuff, you are evil or bad or something. Some of our richest brothers in the States have blessed piles of people, right? Some of our richest brothers here have blessed piles of people. Rich or not isn't the question. Rich or not isn't the question. The question is, what do you care about? And this man cared about his stuff more than he cared about God. That's what made him a fool. That's what made him wrong. So that's the second little point to look at here, and that's the second little thing to see, is that he's a fool because he's stored up a lot of stuff for himself physically, but he hasn't stored up anything spiritually. And he stored up everything for himself. That's the other issue. Which leads us to the next story. Oh, sorry, ordinarily we'll call this man the model to follow. Jesus calls him a fool. Leads us to our next story, Luke 16. Luke 16, the rich man and Lazarus. You might claim that this isn't a story about money, but of course it is. They are described by their financial status. There is a rich man and there is a poor beggar named Lazarus. And these are the two principal people in our story, and the story goes like this. Again, being a parable, you can't push it too far, but listen to the setup of the story. There is a rich man who was dressed in purple and fine linen and lived in luxury every day. At his gate there was laid a beggar named Lazarus, covered in sores and longing to eat what fell from the rich man's table. Even the dogs came and licked his sores. The time came when the beggar died, and the angels carried him to Abraham's side. He's in paradise. He's in the best place there is until the judgment day. The rich man also died and was buried, and in hell, where he was in torment, he looked up and saw Abraham far away with Lazarus at his side. You can go read the rest of the story. The rest of the story has other things to say about warning brothers and listening to the word when you've got it and things like this. But the first part of the story is the part that concerns us. These two men are separated after their death because they were separated in their life. The rich man had all this stuff, and the beggar lived outside his door. And the rich man's problem isn't that he has all this stuff. The rich man's problem is he thinks it's his. The rich man's problem is he thinks it's his stuff and not Lazarus's stuff. The old beggar at the gate doesn't deserve anything. That's the issue. In fact, the rich man spends his whole time thinking, why does he deserve my help? And Jesus is going to ask him, why did you not help him? He laid at your gate every day. You saw him all the time, and you did nothing. He wanted just even the scraps from your table, the stuff you were throwing out, and you wouldn't even give that to him because you didn't think he deserved it. He didn't work for it. He didn't earn it like you did. But the issue is that you should have done something, Jesus is implying. You should have helped him. You should have said, this guy is my problem. This guy is my responsibility. This guy is actually my gift, so I can help. Jesus' stories over and over, not just this one, but over and over again, remind those who have lots to be rich in good deeds. That's what 1 Peter says. 1 Timothy. Remind the rich to be rich in good deeds. If you've got something, you better be sharing it. And the issue with the rich man and Lazarus is that one has lots and the other has none, and there is no sharing being done among them. Jesus says money is for being gracious. Jesus says money is so that you can be merciful. Jesus says money is for kindness and helpfulness and connectedness and responsibility. Money comes with responsibility. We need to be helping and sharing and looking around. And so that brings us to the last story we'll look at in the Gospel of Luke. And again, there are 32 other passages you can go look up. All you got to do is go to a Bible concordance, put in the word money or riches, and then look up the Gospels. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. You'll find out what Jesus had to say. This is just a sampling of them. The last one, Luke chapter 21, is probably the strangest story of them all. This is the one that sounds the weirdest. Those ones have sounded a little bit weird at times maybe, but this is the strangest story. Jesus and his disciples are sitting at the temple one day. In the temple, they have these things that look like trumpets, upside down trumpets. And they're all along the wall. And every one of them is a place where you can donate money to certain things. So if you want to donate money to have wood for the sacrifices, to burn the sacrificial offering, you can throw money in this one. Or if you want to give food to the poor, you can throw money in this one. Or if you want to have whatever, you can throw it, support the priests, you can throw it in that one. And so they've got all these trumpets along the wall. Jesus and his disciples are standing nearby, and it says, as he looked up, Jesus saw the rich putting their gifts into the temple treasury. He also saw a poor widow putting 2 very small copper coins in. I tell you the truth, he said, this poor widow has put in more than all the others. All these people gave their gifts out of their wealth, but she gave out of her poverty, put in all she had to live on. Now, I tell you that this is the strangest story because really this is a terrible financial management story, right? This old woman has only 2 coins left. This is all she's got. And financial management would say, go home. You've only got 2 coins. Go buy yourself some bread or go buy yourself some milk or go look after yourself. You're down to your last 2 coins. Financial management would say at least keep one for yourself and donate the other one. She tosses them both in. Let me be clear here that that's completely wrong and against everything that we would see as financially wise. And Jesus isn't commending her financial smarts here. Jesus isn't impressed with her because she's so financially wise. Jesus is impressed because her gift showed where she put her trust. Her gift showed that she understood that my trust doesn't come from what I have. God is looking after me, and he will provide. I'm going to put first things first, and then everything else will be okay. That's what Jesus is proud of her for. That's what he's happy about. The other people gave more than her. He said the rich were throwing lots in, but it's of their surplus. They can throw it away and not notice it. It's pocket change they're giving. They don't even care. They won't ever miss it. But she's going to miss this money because it was the last bit she had. And so Jesus is impressed with her trust. And Jesus is impressed with the fact that she's willing to do that. And again, I think this fits in not as a financial thought, but it goes to the first one again. That Jesus says, man, we hold money so tight. Here's somebody who's just like, well, let's give it and see what happens. God's going to look after me. And he's proud of her for that. That's worth some thought. He honors her trust in God, not in what she had, right? Her trust was in God, not in what she had saved for herself. Her trust was that God was going to look after her. I came across this quote again. You can't see it very well, unfortunately, but it says, though you can give without loving, you can't love without giving. Though you can give without loving, someone can force you to give. You can do it begrudgingly, but you can't love and not give. And this woman proves her love by what she's giving. She's giving everything she's got because she loves God enough. She loves God that much that she can't hold back. She just has to share what she has with someone else. So here are then the 4 steps. And again, I could have picked 4 other stories, but as I look through all of them, I chose these because they're all in Luke, and they all build on each other, and to be honest with you, they're the same as every other one. Jesus' message about money is always pretty consistent. He doesn't really care that much about it. He just isn't that concerned about it. Go read the rest of them and you'll see that if you like. So let me give you some so what's here and some applications and some things to think about. Just a couple of thoughts that might tie this all together. Number one, that obviously a life focused on money will not end well. That's maybe the most obvious thing we can say about this. If we focus our life on just getting more, doing more, if that's the focus of our entire life, it's not going to end well. It's not going to be a good thing for us in several different ways. This quote I've liked as well, just because it explains the first one, or at least one of the things that will happen if we focus on money. Someone, I don't even know who said this, but they said, as long as you believe that you can buy and display your way to happiness, that should say, the more unhappy you will be. The more you believe you can buy and display your way to being happy, the more unhappy you will be. Right? As long as we focus on money and thinking money and stuff and having things and showing it off is going to make me happy, it won't make me happy. It'll make me unhappy. It just won't work. Jesus said very famously in Luke chapter 16, this is going to be our last scripture to look up. I was just going to quote this to you, but let's read it for half a second because it is important to see it. Luke chapter 16, verse 13. Is that what I want? Actually, I wrote down the wrong verse there, sorry. Did I? The verse I want says, let me just see if I can figure out what I did. I can't. I'll have to give you the verse later. The verse says simply this: you cannot serve God and money. Right? You can't do both. It's one or the other. Sarah's going to find this for me and correct it right away. You cannot serve God and money. The very next verse, and the reason why I wanted to read it to you, was because it says in the next verse, the Pharisees, who were the godly teachers, who loved money, sneered at that. That's what the next verse says. The Pharisees who loved money sneered at Jesus, saying you can't serve God and money. But you can't. One's going to take over, and the other is going to be left behind. One more quote for you to think about: that wealth is like seawater. The more you drink, the thirstier you become. Right? It doesn't quench anything. The more you focus on it, the more you need to focus on it. Right?
You were right.
Am I right?
16:13.
Oh, what am I looking at incorrectly here then? 16:13. Oh, it was right. Look at that. Even when I'm wrong, I'm right. Right? No servant can serve two masters. Either he will hate one and love the other, or he will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. The Pharisees who loved money heard this and were sneering at Jesus, because they thought, I'm not giving up my money to serve God. That's ridiculous. But Jesus said that's the case, right? So anyway, wealth is like seawater. It will make you more thirsty as you chase after it, right? Now again, I'm not here to say sell everything you have, empty every bank account you've got, feel bad if you've got anything nice at all. I'm not here to say that at all. But I think the answer isn't to do that. I think the answer is something else. And I think the answer is the key to avoiding the danger of money is to be outrageously generous. To use your money for something better than just storing it up for you. To use your money for something better than just getting stuff. To use your money for something better by being outrageously generous. And I chose the word outrageously there because it's not just be generous, but be extremely generous. Do what you can do. Do more than what you think you can do. Help people out. Use what your money is a tool. So use that tool well. And the outcome of that is that it just makes us like God. That's what the godly response is, right? God is outrageously generous to us. In fact, Scripture is often challenging us to see if you can outgive God. I've often heard Bob Good, I'm sorry Bob's not here this morning, but I've often heard Bob say, you can't outgive God. And Scripture is always challenging us. See if you can do it. See if you can outgive me. See if I won't bless you if you start giving. Let me give you two examples. This one comes from Proverbs. It says, honor the Lord with your wealth, with the first fruits of your crop. Let me just stop there real quick and explain that. The first fruits of your crop. When you go out to harvest your crop, you get the first bushel in, you get the first grapes in, you get the first bin full of wheat, and you're not sure if you're getting the rest of it. So you better hold on to that first one, right? You better hold that tight. That might be all you get. No, Jesus says. No, God says. Give that one to me. Donate that one and see if I can't give you more. Give me the first fruits of your crops, and then your barns will be filled to overflowing, and your vats will brim over with new wine. Do you hear the reverse of that, though? If you do not give, if you are not generous, I will not fill your barn. Right? That's the other side of that coin. Give to me, and I will fill your barns. Give, and I will give to you. But if you are not generous, then you will not receive the blessing I could have given you. See if you can outgive me. That's what that says. Or the more famous verse that you might be thinking of, Malachi, says, bring the whole tithe into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house. Test me in this, says the Lord, and see if I will not throw open the floodgates of heaven and pour out so much blessing that there will not be room for enough to store it. Isn't that a beautiful passage? Isn't that a beautiful thought? You start giving and see what happens. You start giving and see if I don't throw open the storehouses of heaven, the floodgates of heaven, and give you so much you can't even store it all. God has constantly challenged his people to try and outgive them. Be outrageously generous. See what happens when you start giving. Just as an aside, the word tithe there is the Old Testament standard. The Old Testament standard was you give a tithe 10% of your income, right? We've always said in the New Testament we don't do that anymore because that's an Old Testament thing. I've got a friend who says 10% should be our starting point. Everything got better in the New Testament. Everything in the New Testament is better than the Old Testament. If they had to give 10% of their income, what should we be doing? As I said, I've never seen the book, so I don't know who gives anything, but because some of you have told me, I know some of you exceed that number by a lot. I know you've been way more generous than 10%, but if you're just starting, if you don't know where to start, if you need a challenge, 10% is a good place to start, still. Be outrageously generous, God says. See if I can't beat you. See if I can't give more than you can. I give you this morning simply, as I said at the very start, just as a warning, just as some things to think about. Because here's the thing, I don't know where you're at. I don't know what you have. I don't know what your debt load is. I don't know what you have available. I don't know anything. I know nothing. But I do know this, that over and over and over and over, Jesus says, don't let money be the focus of your life. Do not let physical things outweigh spiritual things. Do not fall into that trap. And so I'm here this morning simply to give you that simple warning. Whatever you do with it from here on out is your decision. However that works out in your life, and however you can do whatever you can with what I've said is up to you. I don't have an application for everybody. I just have this application that says, when we make money the center, we're going to have trouble. The opposite of that is simply this, and it's shown in lots of different places. This is one of my favorite scriptures these days. I have this on my desk. I read it every morning, and I think about it quite often. I don't always do this, but this is what I want to do. David writes in Psalm 143, verse 8, he says, let the morning bring me word of your unfailing love, for I've put my trust in you. Show me the way I should go, for to you I entrust my life. If we were to entrust our lives to God, if that was our first thought, that's where my hope is, that's where my security is, that's what I'm banking on, those are the treasures I've got, then we would use our physical treasures in other ways to benefit and help other people as well. We would be trusting in the right things instead of the wrong things. And we would be generous in the way that God is generous. And we'd represent him even better in the lives of our friends and family around us. Brothers and sisters, I don't know what you're going to do with this, but can you somehow be outrageously generous? This leads to our communion thoughts. It is not a leap at all to go from this sermon to the cross. There is a natural bridge here that is as obvious as can be, because our giving and our attitude of giving is based on the fact that we have been given too. Right? We have been given blessings, we have been given everything by God, including salvation, including redemption, including hope, including spiritual renewal. God is a giver. God gave his Son even when we didn't deserve it. God gave his Son out of his mercy and grace even though we didn't earn it. God is a giver. And as we remember his gift this morning, may we then be givers like him. Let's pray. Father, thank you for your Son. Help us to always remember that that was a gift. That you chose to send him to those of us who needed him. That you chose to send him even when we were unworthy, even though we had no way of earning it. You gave us a gift. Father, help us to recognize that gift and love that gift. Help us to live out of that hope and trust, and help us to be givers to others, both of things physical and spiritual. Thank you for his body on the cross. We thank you for this remembrance time and for brothers and sisters to remember him with. Bind us together as we partake together in your Son's name. Amen. Father, thank you for the blood of Christ. We know that there's no forgiveness without a sacrifice. We thank you for his sacrifice for us. Thank you for his resurrection and new life that we can look forward to as well. Thank you for hope. Thank you for things that last into eternity and are not just left behind here. Father, help us to focus on you and help us to be your ambassadors everywhere we go. Help this memory to fuel us this week in your Son's name. Amen. Once again, we're thankful for those who watch online, whether you're from our congregation and unable to come out yet, or whether you're somewhere else. We're thankful you can participate this way. So, see you next week.